Hello, Dorothy. Thank you very much for coming to see us.
Thank you for coming
to us. That's very kind of you. I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourself for people that might be listening to us at some stage in the future, if you could.
My name is Dorothy Jopson, and I lived in Bramhall in Manchester. I just had celebrated my 90th birthday.
Congratulations. And
I've decided to just come back to old haunts and revisit a visit to Waddington, where at the age of 22, in 1943 in February, I was called up to join one of the services. At the interview, we were asked which service I would like to belong to, and I chose the WAFs. And had I any idea in which way I wanted to serve? And I had been advised by a gentleman whom I had worked with to try and get into the meteorological office, which I did.
So that's good. When you say gentleman you work with, where did you work before you just joined?
I worked for an export shipping firm in Manchester who were in the cotton trade and shipped raw cotton all over the world.
Oh, did they?
And I was a comptometer operator in those days, which nowadays people won't probably recognise what it was, but it was a calculating machine, as you might say, similar to a typewriter is. This was mathematical problems, and we worked out the cost of the invoices and the shipping costs and all that sort of, and the insurance, and did those accounts. And it was from there that I was called up. Having chosen the Met Office, we went along. I can't quite remember where the station that the WAFs went to for training, but we had, when we went there...
So you did your training?
I did my training, and it was there that they first went in, and they gave you a medical examination, and if you passed that, you went through and on, were accepted. Some of the girls didn't pass, and they of course went back to Service Street.
Okay.
After you'd had the medical operation, you queued up, and you had to have an inoculation against smallpox, etc.
That's pretty good. So you said you were about the Australians had come and they were doing their things, and you mentioned about the parties and the goods.
Oh yes, so we had this party in the Met Office, and we just sat round the table, and there was no hard drink or anything like that. They went out when they went. I mean, they were always in the pubs and in the hotels in Lincoln and so on, which I mean was fair enough. That's what they needed. But we of course, one of the chief jobs at the WAF office was brewing up the tea and the coffee, wasn't it?
Vital.
Very
important.
Vital part of it. And then they would come in, you see, and make them a drink or something like that when they came in to have a chat and so on. And we just, I mean, they had fresh fruit and fruit cake and all sorts in their parcels.
Which is obviously missing.
Oh, yes.
And a normal day to day.
Yes. I mean, in England, a lot of children grow up never knowing what a banana looked like. Which seems...
It seems strange today when you think about today.
So, of course, we had all those things. And, I think that's only happened once, but it was a very pleasant occasion.
Good.
They came in and let the hair down a bit.
Did they? Have you any more sort of stories about specific individuals you can remember from the Australians? You say they let their hair down a bit.
Well, no, they were a very friendly crew, and as your squadron leader was saying, as a team they kept together. They didn't intermix really with a lot of their other teams because friendships were so fragile.
Must have been a mistake.
But some of them were very surprised at the what females did over here, because if they'd come from Australia, which was a farming country and very sparse populated, the girls all stopped at home. They didn't go out to jobs and work as we'd done for years, and I think they found us perhaps far more friendly, far more open, and they sound odd this, but more able to discuss things with them than
back out. So perhaps
yes.
a bit of a culture shock for them.
Yes, to come up and because I mean, I myself was working. I worked since I was 16, which was.
That's what you did.
That's what we did. That's what we did. I mean, like going back in our time, the jobs weren't there for the women really till after the war, and that made a big difference because, of course, quite a number of the women. I live now near to Woodford airfield that's just going to be closed down. But that was where Lancasters were, a lot of the parts where Lancasters were made, and it was the local women that came in and made those parts, which
as you say, hadn't happened a lot before until the war broke down new barriers.
Half the staff at Woodford were women.
That was good.
But going back to plotting the charts, we had 2 pen nibs, 2 pens, wooden pens, that were nailed together. And of course, it was the old-fashioned nibs, there were no biros. And so you had one for red and one for black ink, which we needed for plotting the charts. And as I say, all that information was then, you went and typed it out on the teleprinter, and it came back to you and you had the information.
Teleprinter's not what we've been able to find in all the museums. This seems to be the one thing that's missing, isn't it?
Yes,
we've not found one yet.
Not found one yet?
No. And the bombing crew went out 2 nights out of 3. The third one, he knew they would be off. And we used to count them out and then count them in, especially if the weather had changed. And that was a very anxious time.
So you imagine that was probably quite a difficult time, a difficult thing to do.
Yeah. I was once engaged in a spat between the Met officer and who was a flight lieutenant and a squadron leader in the control room, and the weather had changed and it was absolutely terrific, and everybody was on edge for them coming back and landing, and the squadron leader was being very awkward. He was wanting the QFE every quarter of an hour and kept ringing up the Met officer. So I was flying around like a scolding cock because I had to do all the observations, go out in the pouring rain, come back in, calm down the Met officer, and I'd try and be ready with the QFE and the civvy in the control room was a very pleasant man, and he ran down and I gave him, you see, and of course the squadron leader came up and said that they'd had to ring down for it all the time, and so they said, oh well, he'd never said would I let them have it, you see, so he got me off that little bit. But of course the squadron leader, in the end the Met officer got so fed up that he swore at the squadron leader. Now you know what that could cause.
Oh yes.
He was on the charge, and I was supposed to have been going on the day the charge was to be held to a wedding. I couldn't go to the wedding, could I? I had to go and say that yes, I'd heard the Met officer swear at the squadron leader. And it's all, I mean, I wish I could have said, well, you just had to bang the two heads together and say, grow up.
No, I don't know. Never mind. So what was the outcome in the end?
Well, nothing really. They said, I heard him, and I said, well, yes. But everybody was so wound up and agitated. There was nothing the Met Officer could do to alter the weather. It just we'd all got to sit it out. And I said, well, you know, there's nothing that they could do about it, really.
So you missed your wedding?
I missed my wedding. It was one of the WAFs getting married, but never mind.
Was it one of the ones that you worked with?
Yes. No, well, she wasn't in the Met Office. She was in the radar section. Yes. But, anyway.
The radar station here, then. Had a radar station.
Oh, yes, of course she did. Yes, yes. No, the WAFs were in that, you see. I mean, there's a terrific lot of people engaged in getting these flights in the air, not just the pilots. I mean, they did the dangerous part of it, but they got all to rely on the engineers and people who checked them over when they came back in, who were just as concerned about, because they were very set to a crew. I mean, 463 had their own engineers and 467 had theirs, and there was very little interchange between them, really.
Get themselves
Oh yes.
I see.
Yes, yeah.
Did you get to speak to the engineers much while they were here, or not with your job? You were more with the air crew?
Well, we were more with the air crew, yes. You didn't really, they were in another hut doing their job, and all you got with them was just, casual conversation or just ordinary chat.
So where you were working, you still had the same married quarter where you were sharing it, did you, or did they move
yes.
you around?
No, we were there pretty well most of the time. Of course, I was left Waddington in the end of 1945, and was posted to Whitton. And there, it was really the same routine, but there we were in Nissen huts. And as I say, had 10 and 12 it could be 20 of you in a room, and you had to polish your bed space.
So it was like luxury being here.
Oh, it was luxury being in the married quarters, yes. For one thing, if you came off duty, the other two were probably out, so that you after night duty, you had quite a good. Because of course you had to learn to sleep with 30 aircraft going off overhead or coming back overhead.
No soundproofing.
So that now I'm very unconscious. I mean, I lived near Manchester Airport, and the planes could go over and over, and I wouldn't even be conscious of them.
And it goes back
the rest of my family would say, oh, they're very busy there.
Yeah.